In the dead of night, when the moon is high and ill winds blow, and the banshees cry and the moonlight casts an unearthly glow, arise, my love, with tales of woe.
Good evening. It is 12 midnight, the paranormal hour. Welcome to Ghost to Ghost. I'm your host, Chief Lawson. Ghost to Ghost is a podcast to discuss all paranormal and parapsychology subjects. You can find Ghost to Ghost on all major formats, so tell your friends, tell your family. Come listen to Ghost to Ghost. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Ghost to Ghost. Tonight, we have a very special episode, and this is near and dear to my heart. We're going to talk about the Murat Theater haunting. And with me tonight, my co-hosts are Jennifer Verne, our research manager and podcast producer.
Good evening.
And Heather Lawson, case manager and podcast director.
Hello.
Also, we have a couple of special guests tonight. Ed Adams, our retired co-founder, and V. Ferguson, former executive chef at Murat Oasis. So we'll be talking to them a little bit later in the broadcast. So, and...
Real quick.
That's right. I forgot.
I know
Sorry.
you forgot.
Yeah, yep.
It's a surprise. I didn't want to spoil the...
No, that's okay. Jennifer has an
I want to
update.
see the shocked expression on your
okay.
face. Okay. So, I'm going to update on a past podcast we did.
Okay.
And shout out to my sister for bringing this one to my attention.
Cool.
And I like to be, if not always right, at least accurate.
There you go.
So, back on our podcast on the Greenbrier Ghost and Fisher's Ghost, last fall, okay? Mm-hmm. We were talking about the Greenbrier Ghost being the only court case in which the testimony of a ghost convicted its killer.
Mm-hmm.
That's not accurate.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is this from the devil maybe do it? Or?
Nope.
No, you're sick. That didn't...
This is something else.
Ah.
So, because of the podcast and because of my involvement with Spirit, my sister has gotten really into the paranormal now. It's like a trickle-down effect,
Would you like to be a research intern? Yeah.
Right?
We can give her a couple of subjects to start on. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm telling you what. She was watching an episode of Kindred Spirits and kept calling me every 5 minutes. Did you know this? Yeah, I remember that. Well, you said in your podcast that was the only case, and there's another case. And within 5 minutes, I had 3 articles on my phone dinging. She goes, read this.
I tell you what, we might just make her proofreader, our ghostwriter proofreader there. Yeah.
That would be it.
Oh, yeah.
So, real quick, we're going to make this as quick as possible.
Oh, that's fine.
We got information from the ancestrybyalicia.com or .ca.
Okay.
Sorry. The Rhode Island Historical Society and famousken.com. Okay, that's where all this information comes from. It's really quick. This was Friday night, so I'm just throwing this out to you. Because she goes, now, in your podcast, you said, and this guy has said that his case is the only case. And I said, well, I guess we're both wrong. So, Rebecca Cornell's death, okay? This article, Ancestry by Alicia, outlines Thomas and Rebecca Cornell's family from the 17th century. Rebecca's death and how spectral evidence, witness testimony, and early colonial law led to the hanging of Thomas Cornell Jr. in 1673. On February 8th, 1673, Rebecca Cornell was sat in her room. Thomas testifies that he sat with her and spoke with her for about an hour and a half or so. They were all living in the family home. Father Thomas had died.
Yes.
Son Thomas Jr. has come back in to live with his mother, and evidently there were several people living in the house, which was not uncommon in that time, right?
Yes.
So supposedly Thomas was sitting with his mother for quite a while. She refused to go to dinner. She didn't want anything. Later on, the grandson Edward was sent in to check on her, and her body lay charred on the floor in the fireplace. Thomas testified that he was the one to recognize his mother. The coroner testified that Rebecca was deeply burned from the legs to the armpits. He studied portions of the unburnt clothing of her body and the burnt rest of the body and declared that she had come to her own death via an unhappy accident of fire as she sat in her room. So how did this unhappy accident turn into a murder against Thomas Cornell? It took John Briggs, Rebecca's 64-year-old brother, in quotes, and I put that in quotes because we don't know if he was a brother, we don't know if he was a cousin. We don't even know that Rebecca's maiden name was Briggs. They're having a hard time tracing that lineage. But anyway, John Briggs
possibly related. Was
possibly related in some way, which kind of comes important later.
Sure.
It took him a week to come forward with vague allegations that she was murdered via a ghostly apparition that appeared to him one evening while he was laying in bed. So at the February 20th trial of Thomas, it was testified that he was much affrighted and cried out, "In the name of God, what are you?" And the apparition answered, "I am your sister, Cornell," and twice said, "See how I was burnt with fire." Now, the ghost didn't directly accuse Thomas, but the language, "I was burnt with fire," seemed to indicate a murder, possibly.
Being alive when they were burned. Yeah.
Thomas testified that his mother regularly smoked a pipe, and it's possible that she fell asleep at the fireplace and her clothes caught fire, whatever. Other people were like, well, in a house full of 10 people, if she caught fire, how did she not make noise for somebody to call and, call out to her?
Sure.
There's other family members in the house. Lots of things came up. But based on the spectral accusation, 2 examiners, Henry Greenland and Simon Cooper, were sent to exhume the body. And they re-examined it. And upon the secondary examination, they found suspicious wound in the body in the uppermost part of the stomach. There was supposedly a hole near her heart, and there was clotted blood that indicated force.
Yeah.
Now, of course, this is the 1600s. I don't know,
Yeah, the forensics may not be that great. Yeah.
Right. Okay, the body had already been cleaned, prepared, whatever. But the case caused Portsmouth to the rumor mill to just go high speed, right?
Oh, sure.
So over 25 individuals were called in for testimony for the case. And it was very important legal precedents in Rhode Island.
Sure.
And actually, the Rhode Island Historical Society has a book with the transcripts from the trial in it. So that can actually be read. The Cornell murder case was one of the earliest recorded cases in which a spectral evidence was allowed in trial.
Ah, okay.
I didn't know anything about this case too much when we did the Greenbrier.
Sure.
The reason we found this is because Kara was watching Kindred Spirits, and Kindred Spirits investigated the Valley Inn, which was the former Cornell home.
Oh, we'll have to talk to Amy about that when we're up there in Michigan, yeah.
So, Amy and Adam, actually, Amy asked to investigate this house. And if you guys want to watch it, it's the Valley Inn episode. It's the episode right after Zombie Boy that we talked about.
Okay. Yep.
So they investigated, and it's really, really good. I'll let you guys watch that episode. Mm-hmm. But in the end, it's possible that Thomas was actually innocent.
Okay.
Now, whether Rebecca died in an accident, which is possible, or whether, what happened, but it's possible that John Briggs wanted access to that property. And so he conceived of a way to get Thomas convicted so that he could then inherit the property.
Okay.
Or take over the property. Anyway, the interesting thing here, and another reason I wanted to bring it up was not only to clear the air, because we had said in the other podcast that the Greenbrier was the only case in history, right?
Had a legal proof. That,
right.
Yeah,
and so Kara and I were going back and forth. Well, like in the Fisher's case, we know the Fisher's ghost led to the guy being accused of murder, but that information was not allowed in the trial. So he wasn't convicted based on the testimony of the ghost, whereas the Greenbrier case was. This case seems to be that Thomas was convicted because of the ghost.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, to the best of our knowledge, these are maybe the only 2 cases, but I doubt it. Maybe there's more cases out there that we don't know about yet.
Well, they may surface as we go along.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, anytime we do something on the podcast, we try to be as accurate as possible, and I just couldn't sit here and let that one go. Exactly.
No, that's good. I mean, we want to report factually on everything we do. We try to be very, very factual.
We really do. I don't like to be wrong. I don't mind being wrong. I will absolutely admit it, but I do like to correct my mistakes as well. So, the fun thing and the interesting thing is, Sarah Cornell was pregnant at the time of Thomas's murder, trial and execution.
Oh, really?
Yes. So she had a daughter shortly after that, and she named the daughter Innocent.
Oh. Well, that's got to say something right there.
Right. Yeah. My husband was
innocent. She's making a point.
Here's his innocence. So, as a tribute toward her husband's innocence, they named the daughter Innocent. Now, Innocent would later marry Richard Borden. Her fourth great-granddaughter, Elizabeth, would go on trial for murdering her father and her stepmother.
Ah, now that's an interesting connection.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
So, Thomas Cornell Sr., one of his branches goes off with Stephen Cornell. Stephen Cornell goes down to Ezra Cornell, and Ezra Cornell is the founder of Cornell University. The other branch with Innocent goes to Thomas Borden, Richard Borden, all the way down to Lizzie Borden. Mm-hmm. And I thought, holy cow, what a cool connection.
What a diversion.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. What a cool connection.
That is kind of neat, because now your sister found that?
Yeah, because she's like, Jennifer, you said in your podcast, and I'm like,
well,
yeah, I did. And she goes, well, did you know about this? I said, I vaguely remember seeing that episode, but I don't think I really connected it, but okay.
Well,
and then she goes,
big thank you to Carol then for finding all that.
Hey, here's this article. And she goes, well, I've only been researching for 5 minutes, and I found all of this.
Ow. Tell her we'll make her a new subject matter expert. We're looking for a proofreader, and what is it on the internet, Reddit or something, when they go back through?
Fact checker.
Yeah, fact checker. Yeah, we'll make her a fact checker, and put her right on the website and get her started. There we go. Outstanding. Well, tonight we've got interesting. It's going to be a little longer than most of our podcasts. And actually, I did most of the work on this with the help of Jennifer and Heather and Andrew and a few other people. But it's going to be a little different because I'm going to be doing more reading. And Jennifer gets a little bit of a vacation. So, first of all, again, the area is the Murat Theater. And we're going to talk quite a bit about that. And we're going to do quite a bit of history on this one. Because to understand the ghost and understand what's happening, you have to understand the history. Absolutely. What is it that we always say, Jennifer?
Without the history, you don't have the haunts.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what Amy said.
That's a quote from Jennifer.
Yeah. Well, and in the Valley Inn episode, I just rewatched to get information on the Cornell. She goes, without the history, you don't know the true nature of what's going on.
That's true. And sometimes,
you have stories, but not the truth.
Some people will argue, evidence bias and so forth, but really, in 99% of the time, the research helps. And that's a catch. And the first thing I want to tell everybody is, of course, everybody knows I'm a Freemason and a Shriner. And the word Murat, it's not Murat. It's Murat for all the news broadcasters out there. It's French. Murat, not Murat. It drives every Shriner nuts when you're hearing a news broadcast and go, well, we're down at the Murat. I don't know where the hell the Murat's at because it's not there. The Murat is on New Jersey Street, just saying, 550 North. Anyway. Second, we're not Muslim. We're not attached to the Muslim religion. We have nothing against the Muslim religion, but we're not part of it. We're not part of any religion. That is not a worshiping temple. We don't sacrifice goats unless it's on the menu at the Oasis Lounge. And we don't sacrifice anything else at that location, except for one time an alligator that was also on the Oasis menu. So I actually think it came in frozen and dead. But anyway, no Arab association whatsoever. And the history of the shrine, so everybody can understand this. To be a Shriner, you have to be a Freemason. And I'm not going into that because we could do 2 or 3 episodes or maybe a whole season on that. So I'm not going into that. And I apologize. I'm having a little bit of science problems. I think the damn cottonwoods have started.
Yes, they have.
Yeah, I tell you, when I get a new house, first thing I'm going to do is walk out with that wonderful steel chainsaw, and any cottonwood I find is coming down. So anyway, in 1870, this is when actually the shrine was formed in general. Now, the shrine is a club for Masons. And Freemasonry, it's much like a church, but I want to emphasize it is not a church. We are a organization that practices some religious texts, but only in the fact that you don't have to be anything other than religious to join. So in other words, you have to believe in a single entity. It can be named anything you want. And I've got some Muslim brothers I know very well and have no problems with. They're not like the nuts over in the other country keep flying planes into buildings. But anyway, just saying. So in 1870, it was decided that, Freemasonry is great, but they really need a place to party and hang out and relax because there's no alcohol allowed in the lodge, and it's very strict. So 13 Masons came together, and they've been meeting at the Knickerbocker Hotel in New York City. And they talked about trying to put together a club of some sort. And it came about in that period that they decided it was needed. So, and again, a lot of the things, Freemasonry's history is greatly different than that of the Shrine. The Shrine was totally made up for the purpose of enjoyment. Two of the biggest guys, and I'm going to have to blow my nose. I'm sorry, folks. I am so sorry. I thought I had that worked out before I got on there. Silly me. Anyway, more scotch. That's always the answer. Walter Fleming, who was a medical doctor, and Billy Florence, who was an actor, were the two lead guys in these 13. And Florence was touring in Europe and the United States, and he was also given a party for an Arabian diplomat. The exotic style and flavors of the music and the food and everything kind of influenced him. He was also at that time in the production of Arabian Nights, so all the dress and everything was there within the production. And this was a theater production. Dr. Fleming, on the other hand, he thought it was really cool. That was really big at that time. I think, what's the Great Lover? It did a lot of the silent movies. And I'm drawing a blank.
Was it Lawrence of Arabia?
Lawrence of Arabia, yeah. And
was that a big movie at the time?
Yep, and he, there were several big non-talkies, even talkies, but there was another guy, too. That wasn't the one I'm thinking of. You think you know it, Jennifer?
Errol Flynn or Douglas Fairbanks?
It was slightly before them. He was known as the Great Lover. They came after him. Errol Flynn followed in those footsteps because he also made Arab Nights.
There's Laurence Olivier. But
yeah, that's not it either. I'll have to sit and think about it a while. He actually.
We'll just Google it while you're talking.
Yeah, we can do that because he actually haunts his house in Hollywood. And
Douglas Fairbanks.
Is it Douglas Fairbanks? Maybe it was then.
With Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks.
Okay, in Pickford, yeah, it's about the right time. So I think you might be right there. I know he was known as the world's greatest lover at one point. And so anyway, that was all during that period of time. And so when they decided to to create the ancient Arabic order of the nobles of the mystic shrine, this was quite a fancy thing at the time. And they made up all the scripts for the ritual and everything. And it's based on the ritual, and it's they do this in public now, it's nothing secretive. And it's based on the wayward son coming home, And
Are you talking about Rudolph Valentino?
Rudolph Valentino, that's who I'm talking about. That's it. Rudolph Valentino. Yeah, still haunts his house. Good catch, Heather. Good catch. Okay.
Apparently, Gene Wilder did a movie about him.
Yes, he did. I've actually seen that movie. Yeah, I've actually seen that. And he played, I got to tell you, the only guy I'd like to see do a movie like that is Mel Brooks. Yeah, a comedy, because that wasn't a comedy.
No, Gene Wilder's movie was a comedy.
Okay, I didn't think it was that funny, but okay. Don't tell Gene. Anyway,
You'd need a Ouija board to tell Gene.
Oh, okay. I didn't know he passed. So,
yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of movies, of course, I like of his, but that was not one of my more favorite ones. People always go, well, the red fez is a sign of Arabic nature. No, it's not. It's Moroccan. It's never been Arabic. Basically, these guys got together and threw together every bit of costuming and things they wanted. So, the red fez, black tassel, which is the most distinctive of headgear, was delivered from the city of Morocco. It was the official headgear there of people who were upper class, and I think that was just vendors and things wore it in that area. The fez that we wear is personalized. At the top, it tells which temple we're from, and again, it's Murrah is where we're from, and that's at the top. And then the bottom tells a little bit about the individual, what club he's in, or if he's held office. I've got a collection of fezzes that are, when I was president of Next Gen, I got one from the police club, I got one from the firemen's club that are engraved. And someone asked me one time, they said, well, how much do those cost? A lot. About $300 per fez with lettering.
Wow.
And the lettering, if it's a lot, it can run you up to $450. And like I said, I got 3 of them in the closet. The big thing that came out of Shrindom was after they got established and they got their temples going, they said, we really need to do something for some sort of philanthropy that would be great, and they started the hospital system. The philanthropic efforts across the country were fantastic. So this started really during the yellow fever epidemic in Jacksonville, Florida. Local Shriners and Masonic Knights Templar worked long hours to help the sick. In 1889, the media members got together at the aid to Jonestown, Pennsylvania flood victims. In fact, many of the chapters were involved in some sort of charities everywhere you look. And that's the thing. Freemasonry at any level, and any of the independent bodies have their charities, and that's what they support. So in 1919, the Imperial Potentate Freeland Kendrick proposed establishing a hospital to provide medical care for children at no cost. And it was originally an orthopedic hospital. Just so you know, a committee was established. The idea was concluded there should be just one hospital instead of an entire healthcare system. As of today, there are 22 hospitals in 3 countries. We have them in Canada, Mexico, and the United States. I've been to a good 5 or 6 of them on tours. If you get a chance, tours are free. Bring a box of Kleenexes. I don't care how big and tough you are. You'll never walk out there with a dry eye to see what they do. It's fabulous. Today, the healthcare system consists of hospitals, clinics, outreach patients, and telehealth sites. Shriner's specialties have included burn care, spinal care, cancer research, injury rehabilitation, cleft lip and palate, sports injuries, and we are in far more than that. I mean, if you go to their website, and I'm going to tell you, we treated in 2023 133,000 patients free of charge. And that's, again, we have a motto amongst the Shriners. We parade so other children can walk. And we raise a lot of money. A lot of that comes from these guys in the red fezzes you're seeing in the parade. Their dues, their donations are horrifically large, and their hearts are every bit the same. And I'm going to encourage everybody that hears this to go to www.lovetotherescue.com. Make a donation. If you make a $20 donation, it helps the hospitals egregiously. For those out there who want to make, there's certain levels of donation, and they give away gifts. At one time, they had this huge bear. And when Ed made me his daughter's godfather, the first thing I thought of is, my goddaughter needs a bear the size of a Volkswagen. It would be really good to have that shipped over there. So he almost got a bear. They quit doing it that year. I think they get blankets out now, but go take a look at that. Just spend some time. It's really fantastic. So, having said that, now let's narrow down to...
Costco occasionally has those bears.
Yes, Costco has them too.
Oh, so that's the same.
Yes,
okay.
Only this one had a fez on top, and it's called Fezzy the Bear.
Oh.
And it was really cute. There's one, I think, still in our office downtown. Everybody got one. I think you still get them, but I thought they were cool as hell. They're just a neat thing.
It's basically, but that's the size.
Yeah, they're huge. They're the size of a small car. They're huge.
Oh, wow.
So, in 1882, 5 Freemasons wanted a shrine organization. They wanted a temple here in Indianapolis. So they joined the Shrine Temple in Cincinnati, Ohio, and had the temple help them establish one in Indianapolis. We actually came from the one in Ohio, which we have a hospital in Ohio. The local organization of the shrine, called the Indianapolis Shriners, was given a charter in June 4th of 1884. The first potentate was a John T. Bush, who served as such from 1884 to 1897. And the Indianapolis Valley, the Scottish Rite, which is another appendant body of Freemasonry, gave us the Townley and Wiggins Pork House for their meetings. This ought to have been a hell of a meeting. You're in a slaughterhouse. A pork house, that was actually a slaughterhouse. I've got pictures of it. Right. They met in the cleaner sections, obviously, and probably drank, but it probably wasn't exactly what they had in mind. Yeah. Yeah, you would hope they'd be drinking. Yeah, the Murat Temple was built in 1909, and William P. Jonkloss Company, using the designs of Murat Shriner Oscar D. Bolin, he designed it with the Middle Eastern Egyptian stylings, and were fittings for the building intended for the Shriners. So, with minuets, brick banding, towers, stained glass, and terracotta. I mean, this was a work of art, and it was a beautiful, still is to this day, it's a wonderfully beautiful building. The interior is just as opulent as the exterior, and is adorned with brass, marble, and terrazzo floors inlaid with mosaic tiles. It's a beautiful building to see. And the namesake is a Nubian desert oasis, Bir Mira. And I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly. Bir, beer.
Beer.
Yeah, Bir Mira, which is named for a Frenchman. You want to take a swing at that one? Joconde?
Joachim.
Oh, okay. I would have never went that way. Okay. Murat, one of Napoleon's generals in the Egyptian campaign. So we're one of the few temples that don't have an Arabic name, and we'll explain all that in a few minutes, but we have a French name, Murat. The shrine gave the Indianapolis Zoo its first camel. A lot of people didn't realize that. The zoo did not have a camel, so the potentate called over and made sure he got one brought in and given to him as a gift. A lot of people don't realize that.
When was that camel gifted?
That was, I don't know. It doesn't say. And actually, the shrine established the 500-day parade. Oddly enough, we only have about one unit left in it, but we actually formed the Indianapolis 500-day parade. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to back up just
Please,
a second.
yeah, go ahead.
When you said the Indianapolis Valley of the Scottish Rite gave them the Townsley and Wiggins Porkhouse for their meetings, it struck a bell with me, and I'm not sure that Townsley is right. I think it is the Tousey.
Is it
Tousey? Tousey is the original family that owned the Gatling Gun Club before it was the Gatling Gun Club.
That makes sense,
and he and his partner Wiggins
and they both were Shriners, and they both were Masons and Scottish Rite Masons.
They operated the pork and beef packers.
Okay.
And so it is Tousey and Wiggins.
I'm pronouncing it wrong.
The porkhouse. I just like, wait a second.
No, I'm glad you caught that. I'm glad you remembered that. That's outstanding. Well, that's the thing. We're all connected. I've got a little thing on my private.
Well, it's interesting that his house then becomes the Gatling Gun Club.
I always have to laugh because I've got a little thing on the header of my private Facebook page, and it says Freemasons says we don't control everything, only the important things. And back at one time and one day we all did.
Conspiracy theorists go crazy now.
Yeah, everybody's going to have fun with that, won't they? So anyway, also, they formed the 500 Parade. In its early days, it featured Broadway plays, the theater did, and even in 1932, it hosted a speech by Winston Churchill. Between 48 and 63, it did roadshow venues in Indianapolis, and that was before Clues Memorial Hall opened in 1963. And during that time, it was the home of the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra.
Nice.
That's where they were out of.
Yeah.
The orchestra survived the Great Depression due only to the nominal fee the temple charged the orchestra for using the theater.
Nice.
The orchestra made recordings with, and I'm going to butcher this to no end, Fabian. I got that part easy.
Svetsky?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Svetsky.
Yeah.
And in the theater for RCA Victor between 1941 and 1953.
Nice.
The Indianapolis Opera Company briefly used the facility during the 80s. Now, I have a story that goes with that. Because, and these are ones that you will never get out of any book, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm not going to mention names.
I was going to say, are we allowed to broadcast this?
Yeah, it won't get me any more suspended than I usually am. And... what has Chief done this week? But anyway, the temple has many, many rooms, and we'll get into that and the leasing of it and everything later. But they actually, during the 80s, they had an opera singer that came in. He was quite a pompous lad, and I couldn't find his name. I did some research. I was going to ask you to dive into that and see what you could find. In the 80s, he came in. They had to build, in a lower sub-basement section, a apartment for this guy. It had a bedroom, it had a kitchenette, it had a bathroom. They had to build an entire apartment because he was on tour there for quite some time. The apartment, I believe, still exists, but it's been stripped out and used as storage. Now, I'm going to try to see if I can get in there. And for those of you, the surprise announcement, everybody knows I'm writing another book, and the name will come out soon, but that's going to be in that chapter. So if you want to know more, you got to buy the book. A couple things I found when I was researching this, and I don't do as well as Jennifer does. I can tell you that right now, or Eric. And in '84, the Murat Shiners had the second largest membership of all shrine temples in the world. Now, I didn't know that part. I think Dallas, Texas was the only one that was bigger than ours.
Wow.
In '88, though, a fire broke out. And it was in the 68 edition, the club edition, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, injuring 15 firemen. And if you go to YouTube, there are several YouTubes on that. And actually, there used to be a training video series. I have that. It's called Heat for all firemen. Again, everybody knows I'm a fireman, so a fire chief. And it covers that fire. It has some wonderful shots in there. It also covers the jet that flew in from Grissom into the Ramada Inn on the west side. It's all in that same episode. Yeah. And you'll find that on YouTube as well now. So anyway, part of the addition collapsed. However, there was relatively little damage to the structure itself. It was repaired within 8 months and up and operational. The Murat Shrine Temple was built in 3 phases. Phase 1, 1909, the theater was completed. And it was actually started in 1909. Construction started. It wasn't completed in 1910. It seated 2,500 people. It opened with a Broadway play, Havana. Contains formal dining room, also called the Grand Hall, which seated 2,000. The Grand Lobby, Crown Lounge, which at the time was our lounge area, which would eventually be moved to the Oasis, but among a few other rooms that were in there at the same time. And I believe at the time that was also one of the larger buildings downtown. So in 23, it was determined that, and by the way, very important here, the potentate, which is your lead guy, we have what we call in the shrine, the president of any organization, of that organization is called a potentate. His officer line is called the divan. I've heard it pronounced divan and divan, and that just means there's a whole lot of people that don't have a clue which way it's pronounced. I found that either way is acceptable, especially after 2 drinks, they don't care anyway. So, all right, and so in 23, it was decided we needed more room. So they hired Robush and Hunter in 1922 to design an addition, managed to blend it with the original structure. This addition was the Egyptian room, and this room was remodeled after the tomb of King Tut. It also, Canopy room was put in the VIP lounge. There was a few other rooms added this time, but basically that was I think the museum was added about then. And then phase 3, the last one was put in 68, and this was going to be the club room. Okay, it took us away from there, so when they were having orchestra or operatic performances, our people still had a place to go. So in 68, though it was built of concrete, this is a large, structure, and it housed the Shrine Club, which is there today, and it included the Tunisian room, which seats about 120, the Oasis Lounge, the Corinthian room, and the Arabian room that seats about 400. Now, the Arabian room has a very interesting feature, and at the time it was completed, it had a glass dome ceiling, and you could see the stars at night, and it was fabulous. I have yet to find, I'm trying to find this for the book chapter, some pictures of the original one. Somewhere in the 80s, it started leaking, and they had to cover it up, and they had to seal it, but it originally was a glass dome. They replaced it with a artificial dome with fiber optic lighting, so the stars still twinkle above your head. And
Nice.
I'll have some pictures in the book on that. So anyway, that was all done at that time. It was put in and designed, and so and it was completed it actually started in 68. It was completed in 69. So now, the name for Murat, temple is of unusual interest because only 3 temples in Shrinedom do not have Arabic-related names. The name Murat, again, comes from a general in Napoleon's army. So I don't know the other 2. I'll have to look and see what those are. Okay. The nearest ones, there are actually 3 other temples in Indiana that have different areas. We have Hadi, we have... I froze up. I should have made notes on this. Hadi, we have, which is north. We have a temple in Terre Haute, and I can't remember what they all are. But anyway, they are spread around. Now, Kentucky is Corsair, and that's Arabic. And Medina is Chicago. So, again... the other thing is, there's a couple entrances there. The club entrance is actually facing North Street and has a wonderful statue. Now, a little bit about the statue. The statue is called Walking Tall. And, the history of this statue has to do with one of our patrol members who, during I think it was during a parade, one of the shrine children was standing there, and he reached down, picked her up, put her crutches in his other hand, and walked away. And a photographer shot this immortal image of him walking away with this child in one arm and her crutches in the other. And it's called Walking Tall. There's been a song made about it. There's a poem. And essentially it means the same thing as we talked about earlier. No Shriner stands so tall as when he stoops to help a crippled child. Right. So actually, what a lot of people don't know is in the base of the shrine, or base of the statue, there's a door on the back end. You'll see it when you look at it. When Shriners die and they donate their fezzes, a lot of times we have the fezzes cremated and the ashes are put in the base of the statue. And as a memorial to the fallen nobles. Yeah, it's really pretty cool. So, now, get a little bit further, and we're almost done with the history. Murat Theater. And some people know it as Old National Theater. I'll tell you what, if you say that to a Shriner, you'll make them very angry.
It's the commercialization that's taken over everything,
Unfortunately, and this has to be explained to understand that, in 95, the Murat Shrine entered into a lease with the city of Indianapolis. Our building was having problems. Our membership started to decline. And, hell, if we knew what it was going to be today, I tell you what, that's no decline in 95 compared to what it is today. We've lost a lot of members over time. Money and, the pandemic and, sociology between Generation Z and X and all these other people out there. Things have changed and people don't meet like they used to. So, but in 95, we didn't have the money we once had, and we really wanted to fix it up. And we weren't using the theater very often. The orchestra had found its own home, with the Soul Circle Theater, which they converted. And a lot of people had moved away. The orchestra or the opera company had its own theater. So here we sat, and we had this building. It wasn't being used, and we were paying for a lot of money. So they decided to enter into a contract to lease out the theater and partially lease out the Egyptian room to the city of Indianapolis. Okay, and unfortunately, I say, and I'll say this to anybody, any Shriner out there, it was the worst mistake we ever made, because the lease was done for 50 years. It's one thing to lease a property. It's another thing to lose control of it and nobody does 50-year leases. That was just plain dumb, folks. So anyway, the city has it for 50 years. And the city turned around and then released it, because we didn't have a clause in that contract, to a company called Sunshine Promotions. And this goes back to my teenage years here in Indianapolis. And they ran all the concerts, okay? Sunshine Promotions eventually got bought out by Clear Channel, who eventually got bought out by Live Nation. Yeah, who's there now.
And anyone who has seen a concert at the Egyptian Room knows what Live Nation is.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, essentially, the building has two parts. Now, the Shriners own the entire building. It is our building. Some people forget that are not Shriners, but it is our building. The other half belongs, right now, it's being leased by Live Nation. Now, they have the old dining hall, the grand hall in the basement. They have the upstairs Egyptian room and the theater. And so, unfortunately, there was a argument that ensued. And that happened in the early 2000s when suddenly Live Channel got a special sponsorship because they were looking for more money by Old National Bank. And they put they took our marquee and changed it. Well, we said, hey, you can't do that. The name of the building, and still is to this day in our view, is Murat Theater.
Right.
Well, they added the marquee, and this ensued in a court battle, and we lost it. Even though we had a lot of lawyers, we lost it. And so, unfortunately, it stands. So if you talk to Live Channel, it's called Old National Theater. If you talk to us, it's called Murat Center and Murat Theater.
So this goes back to the Hoosier Dome.
Yes.
Deer Creek.
Yes.
Anybody who knows an establishment one way, it's always going to be that way.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realize that, that happens. But, when I grew up, I still call it Deer Creek.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's what I knew it as.
That's what it was. That's what it is.
It's kind of like we talked about earlier, the pronunciation of the word Murat, when it's actually Murat. Yeah, if you say Old National, matter of fact, a certain brother, and I won't say his name, thought it would be really funny to make up a fake fez and put Old National on the fake fez instead of Murat. Jesus Christ. If they could have found him, they'd have took his card. He knew he was in for it when it was a joke.
Funny.
No, it was a very poor.
That's
make you wonder.
Funny.
There's a lot of guys who wanted to kill him. I didn't dare breathe a word knowing who it was, but yeah, he thought that was real amusing until it all backfired. That was really stupid. Too many people have, and if you think some of these guys have spent 40 years in this building,
right?
It's always tell people. I think most Masonic lodges are haunted. I think probably the Scottish Rite. I think probably a lot of places are, because these guys were passionate. They were dedicated. They were there to help the philanthropy that was there. And they really, they wanted to do these things, and they believed in them, and that spirit stays. And so, certainly, it's a heartful thing. I will say the parking company they got presently is pretty good. We've had problems with them in the past, being confused on who owns the building. But anyway, now, we're going to skip to Elijah Jacobie. This is a name that came up briefly in the history. Elijah Jacobie was the potentate when the temple was first built. Now, again, beforehand, they were meeting in a packing facility, a slaughter packing facility. Yeah. And that was where the Scottish Rite actually started, before they got their building built. And all these buildings kind of come up at about the same time. Mm-hmm. So, essentially, what happened was they turned around. And they bought this. Now, this is a whole square block, okay? They also bought, and they don't talk about this, but they bought several other buildings, one of which later would be called the Joint Unit Building, where the units met. And they bought, these were apartments, and they just bought the whole apartment complex, gave each apartment to a different, unit to use. So anyway, they were buying up this as we went. So, he was actually the founder, and he was very proud of the theater. So the Murat, and I actually have all the blueprints. I have the lease and everything that all goes into this mess. But the building was built in 3 stages. He claims all 3 stages. But, again, this was one of the most beautiful facilities there ever was. And I mean, certainly at the time, we were in Hades, we were the second largest shrine out there. I remember that because when we came to town, and I love telling this story, it's true. We went to Baltimore, and they'd actually told the police there, unless somebody kills somebody, it's a Shriner, don't arrest them. Just help them get back to the hotel. We bring an influx of money. I know there was an incident at a hotel in Vegas, and the guy looked at me and goes, "We don't care. It didn't hurt anybody, and it's harmless because we're making $1 million a day off your temple alone." And between gambling and everything else.
Wow.
When you roll big money, they don't, and again, a lot of the guys that were in the shrine were well-to-do business owners. They were very influential people, in the public. So, but Elijah was very influential within the shrine because not only was he potentate for like 3 years in a row during the building of the temple, but he went on to become imperial potentate over North America. And we have organizations in 5 countries, but, they call it North America, and that's because that's where it's at. And honestly, he was, imperial potentate at that time. So now we know a little bit of history. We're going to talk a little bit about the hauntings. So, the first story at Murat, and actually Jacobie, like I said, I think he was really attached to this. I think he's the center point of most things that have happened there. But oddly enough, the first time I became aware of this was back in 2002. I was at a band night, and this was held for members only, and you brought your friends and guests. Cheap liquor, good food. Well, back then it was food. Anyway, sorry, John and Patty, if you're listening. But anyway, and it was a band night. A band played to midnight, so it was a great time. Anyway, I had walked out in the foyer, and there's several large paintings there of both Elijah Jacobie, Baker, and at the time, later on, John Sonato would be added to that. They were all 3 imperial potentates from Indy. But his painting was supposedly, now the first story I was told was hermetically sealed in a case. I saw the case. It wasn't hermetically sealed. Somebody made it. They stuck it in there. It was plexiglass on the outside. It was no more sealed than a man in the moon. It had dust in the bottom. And when it got dead bugs, they had to open it up and clear it out. But it was actually a hand oil painting that he sat for. Well, a gentleman came up, another Brother Noble, and said, "Hey, watch that painting. It's haunted." And I go, "What do you mean it's haunted?" He goes, "Yeah, it's haunted. It cries and, looks around." And of course, and I don't know what the term is. I'll let Heather look this up. But there's a term in art and painting where when you paint eyes, that no matter where you go in the room, the eyes will follow you.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And there's a term for that. And I don't know what the term is. But anyway, this painting was done that way, whether intentionally or unintentionally. So wherever you go, his eyes follow you. Mm-hmm. Now, the paintings have been moved from the general lobby entrance up to the second floor. It's the stair landing between the first and second floor. This is where they're now housed at. They're over where the old mural used to be. And anyway, it was thought that these paintings were haunted. So, of course, I was a avid, investigator back then, and I happened to be with been with a group, and I was coming out, just coming out of things, and certainly interested in doing more research. So, I found out that Elijah Jacobie died in 1935. And after that, many strange things started happening in the temple. A lot of them around his painting initially. And one of the other things that came up was in the theater, at the time, the potentate had his own box in the theater because it didn't matter what was going on. We owned the building. Potentate had a right to fill the box with his friends and get free admission. He had a separate door entry. You had to have a key, a separate hall. Nobody could get to it unless you got to it from the members' side. Now, those are gone now. I want to say that. They redone the theater, and we'll come back to that. But anyway, he had his own box. In that box, they started noticing a blue light. We nicknamed it the Blue Orb. And it was Jacobie's ghost who would attend some of the performances. The performers look off stage very horrified to see this floating blue orb hanging out in the box. And it was believed to be Jacobie checking to make sure the performances were done correctly. I talked to several people on several of the musical groups that came in and performed, and they were telling me about different things that happened in different area annexes of the theater. There was a Broadway performance that came in, and the women were preparing wigs and stuff downstairs, and they told me that they had several odd noises, and the wigs move on their own, and several things that were very, very haunting. But as you go back, you can document in the 40s and 50s where they've seen this floating orb. They've seen it in front of the painting. They'd seen it in numerous places. So and it's transparent. It's just like a regular orb. So we kind of figured, illustrious Sir Jacoby was haunting the place. So, being the New Temple's potentate, it would make perfectly good sense. It really intensified in 1995, and the reason why is because they decided that, they were going to go ahead, and this was when the contract was made with the city, and part of the thing was, we had what we call Mecca Light, and again, we're not Muslim, nobody, there might be some members that are Muslim, but I don't know any of them personally in the temple. Most of the guys I know are just in Freemasonry. But the Mecca light had quit working, which was this flashing light, and it had stopped working.
I remember that.
Yeah, it stopped working, and it's working now, but I don't think they turn it on nearly as often as they used to because they don't want people to misunderstand that it's nothing to do with the Muslim religion. But the Mecca light had quit working. There was stuff in the theater that needed to be redone. Some of the electrical was starting to go bad. You're talking about an old building.
Right.
And in the 60s, when they did the club, they also removed a lot of the knob and tube wiring and replaced where they needed to. So anyway, at that point in time, they refurbished the theater. Well, one of the big things we say in parapsychology is a theory called the construction theory. That construction can either amplify and increase activity, or it can decrease or cease activity. So 95, they tear apart the theater. They get rid of the balcony seats. They still have a balcony, but just one big open balcony. The orchestra the orchestra pit in the front was removed and leveled, and I think they had a choir balcony, but don't quote me on that. But anyway, it was all totally redone. And unfortunately, that really apparently upset Jacoby. And I was in there with another group that's defunct now, and I got to go in with them on a tour, and the painting was seen to be crying. It seemed like the painting of Jacoby was crying. And we always figured it was because he found out they were redoing the theater that he loved so much. Activity on the other side increased. Some of the shows they had come in complained of things missing, things moving, seeing apparitions, and it got very hairy. So that all correlated with the 95 remodel. Now, at that point, that's when we lost control of the theater, went on to the lease. Now, we still can get it. We used it, I think, in 2013 for the 33rd degree. It came in for the Scottish Rite. The theater was used to put on the degree. But it is very, very difficult to get that, but the potentates can request it, and we can use it. I don't know whether they trade something off. I have no idea how the process goes. But anyway, at that point, probably most of his hauntings really did occur. So, after it was done, there was a lot of question of whether or not the activity continued. And actually, back in October of... I didn't make a note of this, so I'm going to apologize, but I believe it was 2006. I was asked to write an article for the Murat magazine. Now, we have a magazine that goes out to all of the membership, and it was Halloween time, which is, our busiest time of the year because everybody thinks of ghosts at Halloween. So I was asked to write an article called The Blue Orb, and I named it The Blue Orb, and it was after the hauntings on the theater side, plus the painting, which resided on our membership side. So anyway, lo and behold, and if you want to go look at the painting, go to YouTube and look up Haunted Murat Temple. And that's before the contract and the merge. You'll get to see a couple of Brother Nobles there, and you'll get to see the painting. And it is encased in a box, so keep people from touching it because it's an original oil painting. The painting had been refurbished when they redid the Oasis. We'll talk about that in a minute. But anyway, essentially, at that point in time, it was believed that the painting was crying because of that reason. Since then, numerous things have happened there off and on, but they started to die out. Now, takes us a little further in, okay? And so at this point, I want to make sure I'm catching my notes here. In 94 was when the painting cried, okay? And they had some mediums, and they said that, he was upset, and I think that's probably accurate. They didn't say why. I thought if they were good mediums, I don't know why, but they didn't say that. I mean, if we had Cindy Crazzo or Chip Coffey or
Patty.
Yeah, Patty, I'm sure they'd have told us this because they were organizing the temple. But the ones they had, they didn't pay as much for or something. I don't know. But anyway, then also, there was another ghost they'd seen frequently. It started up right after the remodel. And it had to do with an iron worker who originally fell to his death back in 1910, right before the opening, for the finishing of the temple. He fell from the superstructures in the overhead of the actual stage. When he landed in an X pattern. So this X pattern would show up on the actual wood of the floor of the stage, and you could see it. And also the substage underneath would have this X that would show up as like a shadow figure. And so he believed that gentleman was also haunting the location. Now, Jacobie didn't just stay in the theater and just at his painting. He was also seen from time to time in the Egyptian room and other areas. So we really do believe that he definitely was the one that was doing a lot of this. And I do believe that had a lot to do with a lot of things. Now, events that led up to the recent, okay, and again, we have this construction again. Back before, I believe it was 2019, the membership, well, actually go back a little bit before that. In 2017, a bunch of people decided they wanted to sell the building, and this drove a big divide between the Shriners and themselves, because some of them thought it would be okay. And Clear Channel, with the time, or Live Nation rather, had tried to pull a fast one. They came in and offered us $14,000 for the building. Just so, yeah, $14 million. I'm sorry, not $14 million. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I was going to say,
no, that had been joked off. $14 million, but that still was a joke. In 1958, the building was valued at $3,580,000. That was in 59.
Right.
So the building, we figured, was worth $40 million as it stood. Clear Channel didn't want to give that much. They wanted to buy it. Now, here's what they were wanting to do. They were going to take over the building where our parking was initially for the potentate and everything. They were going to put a 3-story hotel in there to put up their performers, so they had a place to stay. Then they were going to add a parking garage, and then at the corner of actually Alabama and North, they were going to build us a 3-story smaller building, one with a ballroom at the top, a meeting room at the second floor, and then the Oasis and band area there, and they were supposed to be building it, and they were going to take our north lot, turn it into apartments to an 8-story high-rise, and then we would get a percentage of everybody that rented an apartment out there. The only problem was the plan got picked apart because the plan didn't include any of our structure, moving any of the antiques over. It didn't include lighting. It didn't include fixtures. It turned out we were given basically we were going to build a shell. We'd have to spend another $300,000 putting it back. And pretty quickly, we figured out we were getting screwed. And so the membership rose up and said, no, we're not selling this building. It's our building. There's too many members that have died that believed in it. We're staying. Right. So we defeated it in a vote in 17. So at that point, they tried several times, several different ways, and couldn't get it sold. And a few of the members had drank the grape Kool-Aid and thought it was just a great idea. And then when they realized they started looking for other places for us to be, there weren't any. This was it. And I agree, downtown's a pain in the ass. It's hard to get through traffic. It's dangerous downtown these days. It's not like it used to be, but still, that building's worth a lot, and we don't want to give it up yet. So when they figured out they couldn't sell it, they decided to put some money in it, and they started raising funds and so forth. And one of the things they did, they talked about redoing the Oasis, which is where we all went to drink and socialize, and some of the other meeting rooms. So they came up with this $3 million plan to redo the entire Oasis. And I'm one of the old timers. I liked it because it was like Cheers. You went in, it was your bar, you knew it. I kind of liked the old way, and they were going to very much modernize it. When that started, it started with the kitchen being redone, and then the room next to the Oasis was called the Tunisian room. It had a wonderful grill, and years ago we used to have Sunday buffets. People would line up for these, and they would have steaks, and it was very minimal to members. It was members only and their guests, and you could go in there and eat Sunday brunch or Sunday lunch, and it was a very big thing. They were restoring the grill, and they were working on redoing the kitchen entirely. This is when all things started to go again. Yeah, construction theory kicked in, and so one of the first things we had happen, we were pretty mild, okay? And Ed Adams, our co-founder who retired, Ed was at the bar one night, and I remember him calling me, telling me this story. So we're going to take a quick change over here, and Ed's going to come on, and he's going to tell you the story of what he saw and what happened. So we'll be right back after this interview. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Ghost to Ghost. This is your host, Chief Lawson. With me tonight is our director, Heather Lawson.
Hello.
And our special guest, our retired co-founder of Spirit Paranormal Indiana, Ed Adams.
Hello.
All right, tonight we're discussing the hauntings at the Murat Shrine. And one thing I want to clarify for our listeners, a lot of people don't realize this, but the Murat Shrine building is actually really kind of two parts. We own the entire building, the Murat Shrine does. But we rented out, back in the 90s, we rented out the theater and the Egyptian room side to what is now Live Nation. So they control that half, we control our half. But both halves at one point were haunted. They both had activity. So normally, as we were going through this podcast, we're relating some of the different activity that occurred, and also part of our investigation that we did on the club side. And this is the side, and I want to point this out, this is not open to anybody but members. So you have to be a noble of the shrine to get in this side, or a guest of a noble, and they don't allow paranormal investigations much anymore. But one period of time when activity was very, very high, numerous things happened. And Ed was at the Oasis Lounge one night, close to closing. And Ed, I'm going to let you take it from there and tell the folks what you saw.
Sure. Well, back in my single days, I used to hang out late at the bar.
And we don't remember any of that, do we? Some.
But I would often stay late because our female bartenders were closing. The neighborhoods can get kind of dicey at times, and so we like to take care of our folks.
Sure.
And so I would often, if I was going to stay late, I would just wait until they closed. And so the bar had pretty much closed, and she was in the process of closing things up. And I just happened to glance towards the doorway, there's a doorway which leads led into the hallway. Now, there's been a remodeling since then. That doorway no longer exists. It's been moved. But from where it was, it had a glass window. She had actually already shut the door, but there was a glass window. And I just happened to look around, and I saw a figure running down the hallway. And it looked very much like one of the members of our men's chorus, because our men's chorus had a rehearsal that evening. And I thought, well, that's weird. I thought Dick left a long time ago. Mm-hmm. So I went into the hallway, looked both ways, didn't see anything. And I thought, well, that's strange. I thought, well, maybe he went down to the janitor's room to get something. And so I went downstairs, checked the whole basement area, and then never found a thing.
Wow.
Nobody there. But it was very clearly a figure that ran down the hallway.
And I remember later on you found out he and another brother had left prior to, and you knew they had left, but you just thought he came back in, and he, when time closing came, there was nothing there.
That's right. Yeah, nothing there.
Yeah, it's one of the many mysteries of that building. Now, I know you and I, when we formed the group, this was a big investigation for us, and that's been some years back. But, do you remember anything else happening odd that you were a witness to?
That I was a witness to?
Yes.
There were a number of times where I would check things out in the basement to make sure nobody else was left in the building, because from time to time we did have some transients who would come in the building and stick around after closing, and that obviously caused some problems. So there were times where I would check around the basement, and it was not uncommon at all to encounter cold spots. Mm-hmm. To encounter sounds.
And this was in the basement, right?
Yeah, in the basement.
Okay,
yeah, sounds of what sounded like footsteps, and movement. Occasionally, some door movement. I never really heard a door close or slam.
Yes.
But it like a door moving, like the hinges.
Yeah,
squeaking.
exactly, squeaking. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know if you remember this or not, because I don't know if you were. I can't remember if it was you with me or what. But we were there late one evening, and as I remember, there was someone that came in, and we didn't think it was a noble. There was someone that came in, a young guy, and I can't remember the bartender. I can't remember if it was Rachel or if it was Kat or somebody. Somebody saw him, said he saw him run by, and I noticed somebody go by pretty quick, and it was nothing unusual. Occasionally the theater side, for whatever reason, would come in. They'd go down to where the restrooms were at, and there was a door there going to the stairs, and they'd shoot down those stairs. And I remember someone said something. I said, well, I'll just, like you, I mean, a couple times I'd stay after if I was there late and, make sure the girls got to the car okay. And I remember going downstairs to try to see what I could see, and I got off the elevator, and of course it's pitch black, and, I thought, no, I'm not going down the stairs. I'll just take the elevator. I get off, and I'm walking around, and before I can even get to it, was it the Tunisian room where the meetings are held right there? The lights are on automatic. What is it?
Yes.
Yes, that's what I thought.
Corinthian room.
Yeah, Corinthian room. I'm sorry, not Tunisian. Corinthian.
Yeah.
And as we started in, I was probably 10 feet from the door. I was nowhere near. You had to actually walk in the room for the photo cells or motion, the PIR motion heads, to pick you up and turn the lights on. The lights started coming on automatically. I thought, son of a gun, he ran into there. I walked in, and there's nothing there. And I got in the middle of the room, and I was kind of looking around, and I remember hearing steps behind me, and I thought it was you coming up. And I turned around starting to tell you what I'd found. That's the first time I really got a little heebie-jeebie, because I turned around and you weren't there. And there was nobody there, and I'm thinking, holy cow, I even felt like somebody was coming up behind me. I went back upstairs, and I remember a couple of times Kevin Scott, our subject matter expert on spirit, several times he said it. He thought he saw somebody and went downstairs, nobody there. So, and we've got some other parts of this show as we're going to interview hopefully some other folks that will have some more accounts of things that have happened there. But Ed, I appreciate you coming back to do this, and I really appreciate the information. And I'm sure everyone is glad to finally get to meet you and hear from you. So, folks, that's the end of this interview for I and Ed Adams and Heather. So we're going to return to the show. All right, folks. Now, after we heard from Ed, that kind of lays the ground to what's going on. Now, Heather, tell me again. Heather looked up the artistic style that allows the eyes to see you anywhere in the room. It's called a
linear perspective, and it causes an optical illusion.
Exactly. So, all right. So we know the painting has that. Now, we talked about Doc going to the bathroom, oddly enough, as a spectral entity. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the clown's experience. Sometime after this happened, the clowns had their meeting. That night, it was I think it was during the winter time. It was pretty cold, and a lot of the clowns, for their age and health condition, didn't come. They might have had about 5 or 6 people in the meeting. So rather than go down to the clown meeting room, which in the basement we have different rooms for different clubs they meet in, rather than go in the meeting room, they decided to stay up in the Oasis. It was nice and warm up there. They'd have a few drinks and some dinner and have their meeting as they worked. That night, Phil Christie, which I know he won't care me using his name, he was, I think, president of the clowns at the time. Him and Cosmo and Boots all left a little early, so they weren't witness to this. There was about 4 clowns left. Rachel was the bartender, and she related this to me. And what happened was the old Oasis had a back entry. There was 2 entry points, front and back. A shadow figure walked in. The clowns that were there saw it. One of the older clowns was very devastated about it. It walked the entire length of the Oasis, and the back of the Oasis had room dividers called AB rooms. It walked back, and those were dark. The lights were turned off in that section because the only body there was 4 clowns and Rachel, the bartender. Right. It walked and disappeared in the darkness. And V was in the kitchen, so he didn't see it. That was the actual chef there. So at that point in time, we got this shadow figure. Everybody's, I can only see in my mind's eye, are standing there with their mouth open, in awe of this figure that walked down.
Wow.
So they're not sure what's going to happen. Actually, she called me and said, "You're not going to believe this. So she explained to me what happened. And I actually drove down there, and I waited. So, I was there when she left. The clowns were shook good. Matter of fact, the one member in particular, he didn't come back for a few meetings till, it kind of, he told me, he says, "I'll never be here by myself. Needs at least to have a few of you guys, or I won't come to a meeting."
Holy cow.
And so it shook them up pretty good. So that was the next one. Then the third one was the one, and I take it back, I don't think I came down the clowns. I came down the band issue.
Okay.
Same drill. Rachel is our bartender. And later on after this, I should point out, she went to go work in the office in the daytime. I think I know why.
Uh-oh.
So, yeah, poor Rachel. So anyway, now I did try to reach her, and I didn't have any luck. But the band was in, the Murat band, and they were in the practice. There was a gentleman, and I'm not going to mention names because I didn't get a chance to talk to these guys. I couldn't find some. If they've passed, I usually use their name because I figure they don't care. But that night, the band had been practicing. It was a common thing that when the band, any unit, was done practicing downstairs in the basement in their unit rooms, when they came up, the bartender, once everybody came up, would go downstairs, turn all the lights off, and then come back upstairs. And there's an elevator. There's stairs and an elevator. Most everybody uses the elevator. And so anyway, the band had finished and came up, and Rachel had asked one of the members, "Are you guys done downstairs?" She says, yeah, I'm done. Go ahead and, you can lock up. She went downstairs, and when she got on the elevators, it reached the basement floor. She heard someone playing a trumpet and playing it very vividly. And when the doors opened, it was still playing, so she just hit the first floor, thought, well, they're not done. He probably didn't know they were still down there. She went up, and she went walking by another member of the band, and he says, that was fast. She says, well, one of your members is still down there. He says, well, honey, I don't think so. I think we're all upstairs. He's as far as I know. So she walked over to the original member and said, hey, there's somebody down there still playing. He's playing trumpet. And he says, no, I'm afraid that's not accurate. He said, the only trumpet player left about 40 minutes ago. And, there's nobody down there who plays trumpet. She says, are you sure it's a trumpet? He says, matter of fact, all of our brass instruments, horn, French horn, all that, they're gone. He said, and they don't have any instruments here. Oddly enough, there was an old trumpet that was left at the base of the elevators around the corner. She didn't see it when the elevator hit, but it was sitting down there. So the member, and they didn't know this yet, the member said, well, look, I'll ride back down with you. So they get down to the floor, the basement, and they can hear a trumpet playing when the elevator gets down there.
Still playing.
Still playing. Still going on. I asked him if they remembered the song. He said at the time, it didn't really hit me to think about the song. The doors open, and the trumpet immediately stops. They go out, and they find this old trumpet. And Rachel asked him, she says, well, there's his instrument. He goes, that's an old trumpet. It doesn't even have a mouthpiece. It was in the storage room. I don't know who got it out. He said, but it's been in there forever. I don't know who it even belonged to. And so they started searching the basement. And after a thorough search of all of its compartments, they didn't find anybody down there. And the band had a practice room, and then they had a storage room where they stored all their instruments. So the band owned instruments. They put the trumpet back. They shut the lights off. They went upstairs. Well, I was the next person who got the phone call.
When was this again?
Now, this would have been probably... and I've got to look and see because I don't have a date on this.
Early 2000s, though?
Well, no. It's probably more like 2000... I would say 17, 18.
Oh.
So this wasn't that terrible. No, it was, let's see here. We got married and we met in 18. Didn't we? Right around there. I would say this had to be around 2015, 2016 when they redid the kitchen. Because the kitchen actually, now I'll explain that in a minute, but that was when they were redoing a lot of stuff before they redid the whole Oasis Lounge.
Okay.
So we got called in I got called, and I went down there, and I talked to one of the band members. He was a tuba player, and I talked to him. He said, look, this is what I heard. I said, okay. So I got on the elevator, okay, and all the lights are shut off, and I get on, and as the elevator reaches the basement, I hear a trumpet playing. And it was more like he was doing a scale. And when the doors opened, the trumpet quit. I thought, well, I'm not strolling out in total blackness unless I got somebody with me, so I hit the button and go back upstairs. Ed wasn't there, so I took the tuba player back down with me. Now, when we went down the second time, didn't make any noise, nothing. There was nothing playing. Wow. We came back upstairs, we talked about it, and we said, well, it's got to be Jacobie, and we got laughing. Now, oddly enough, as I started researching Jacobie, he was a trumpet player in the band.
Really?
Yeah. So
that's cool.
I thought that was neat how that came together. So, all right, so more and more things are happening. People are seeing things, and so anyway, we decide we want to do an investigation. Okay, at the time, the potentate was in, said, well, I have no problem with it, but some of the van have issues. I said, well, how about this? How about we have a Paranormal University master class there? Let some of the members, for members only, of the Shrine, they can sign up for the class, and we'll do this. This way we can investigate at the same time. It wasn't our preferred method, but at least that way we could do it, because we had to have somebody come in and lock up after we got done at like 4 in the morning. So in 2017, July, of 2018. I'm sorry, I told you wrong. July of 2018. So most of this would have took place 2016, 2017. It was during the kitchen renovation. We came in and did a class, okay? And V. Ferguson, the executive chef, was one of the members there. And a lot of things got really weird. So anyway, at this, we're going to switch over to to V. Ferguson's interview and let him tell the story as he saw it. So we'll be right back. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Ghost. Tonight, we're interviewing a very special guest. With me tonight is Heather Lawson.
Hello.
And V. Ferguson, the executive chef at Murat Shrine. Hello, V.
Hey, how are you doing?
Doing well, and everybody is dying to hear from you. And can you tell us a little bit, when were you executive chef there at the Shrine? What year time? Do you remember?
Oh,
yeah, I
man.
promised I wouldn't ask you a hard question, and I just asked you one. Sorry.
We got 2006 to No.
I thought it was a little earlier than that, but maybe not.
Yeah, I'm going to say 2000, because I was there 6.5 years.
Yes.
I left there right about 2022.
Okay, that sounds about right.
2016.
Okay, that works. 'Cause some of the finest food we ever ate. I mean, and I thought I still were good friends and brothers to this day. And V is also a brother noble with the Shrine. And during that period of time, you worked some long hours. I know back in the kitchen. Tell us a little bit about some of the weird paranormal things you saw during your period of tenure there.
There were several times, man, that things would just drop off of the shelves.
Mm-hmm.
Pots, pans, things not being where they used to be.
Yes.
And I know good and darn well because, we have a certain setup that we do every day.
Yes.
And, you go to reach for something and it's not there.
Somebody moved it, didn't they?
Yes, somebody moved it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't any of the staff members. So, yes, somebody did move it. We went through that big construction phase.
Yeah, where they were working on the grill and doing the kitchen work and the kitchen floor. That really seemed to increase things, did it not?
Yes. They were putting baseboard after they did the tiling the floor. They did a bunch of baseboard work. And, there was a couple odds and ends. They were going to come back and, I guess you say, tidy up with before the whole kitchen was complete.
Yes.
But there was one incident, and it was actually, and I don't know why it took that long, but there was the incident that there was a couple pieces of baseboard just sitting up against the wall.
Yes.
And the day of the investigation and the class,
Mm-hmm.
They just randomly dropped to the floor. Now it was 2, 3, 4 weeks that same piece of baseboard was sitting in that same area.
Never moved or anything.
With all the door opening back and forth.
Sure.
That you think something would have ajarred it.
Sure.
But it never happened until that night of the class.
I remember you telling me right before, and the class that V is talking about is our Paranormal University Master Class. And after some of the construction was underway, we actually held a class there that night. And right before our team started arriving to set up the class, V came out and told me, he says, "You're not going to believe this." And he told me this story about the piece of wood. And it's very odd. Let me ask you, during that construction, was that the period of time where they closed off those 2 little bathrooms back there? Or do you remember?
The 2 bathrooms?
Yeah.
The 2 bathrooms back where?
Back in the kitchen, the ones that didn't work right?
No, Chief. Those were already closed off, man.
Okay, I couldn't remember whether they were closed off before or after that. The reason I ask is I had a person come to me after you left and said one night at about 11 o'clock they hadn't had anybody, and that individual had stayed late to clean up. And something knocked from the inside of that wall where those bathrooms were at. And yeah, just knocked, just like they were knocking on a front door. And
Okay.
and the individual asked me, he said, "What's on the other side of that wall?" And I said, "Well, funny you should ask that." I said, "There was either one or two bathrooms and I think like a mop room there." And I said, "The plumbing got screwed up and they just closed it off as far as I know." And I said, I said, hell, it might be a time capsule from 30 years from now. You open it up and see what a bathroom looked like 50 years ago. And I said, but I said, that's all I know. It's back there. And he never told me what happened before he started asking me about this wall. And I said, to the best of my knowledge, that's all I know. And he said, well, someone else had told him that was originally bathrooms. And he says, you're the ghost guy, right? I said, well, okay, that's one way of putting it, sure. And he said, well, I heard a knock. He said, that night, I was here late. I was doing some work cleaning up and doing some really deep cleaning and helping out with stuff and prepping food for some event they were having. And he said, I swear to God to you, I heard a knock. Now, I asked him, I said, you didn't count how many times it knocked, did you? He said, is that something important to ghost? I said, no, but it isn't Freemasonry if you know how many times it knocked. He said, no, he said, I was a little taken back and I don't remember making a note of it. And he's no longer there. So I wondered if you'd ever had anything like that happen.
That I have not.
Okay.
And that they with all the construction, and you could actually see where the either the boys' room and the girls' room was.
Yeah, because it still had the door frame.
Yes, because the doors were there and they were completely covered in.
Yeah. Now I don't know. After the major construction during COVID, I've been back there once, but I've never really been back there a lot. So I don't know. I assume they got rid of those, because I know they totally redid most of the kitchen area to the best of my knowledge. But I don't know how that ended up. I wasn't there when that was taken out. So they're probably gone now. But I remember him bringing that up.
Yeah, when I first started there, Chris, they were completely taken out then.
Okay.
And then the only thing that was left that was in between the left side door, which was just a frame of a door.
Sure.
And the right side frame of a door.
Yes.
But in between those two was where they put the utility room for the mop buckets and everything like that.
Okay, I thought that was the way of it. That's what I was telling, because I didn't go back there and look. He came out and spoke to me in the Oasis, and that's when, because he came up and asked me, he says, is your name Chief? I said, oh, it could be. Why? And then, he came up and he started telling me all this, and I thought it was kind of interesting. But, really, that's the only thing since the major renovation anyone's told me, that I've been through several cooks and chefs since then, and I don't know. I mean, none of them ever said anything to me but the one. But, I remember all the things that you had going on. Now, let's go back to the night of the class, the Paranormal U class. And we came in, and there was several nobles in attendance. I don't think there was any general public. I think it was a class. We put that particular class on for the nobility. And I believe a couple of guys from the police club were there. God, I can't remember everybody was there, but I remember one of the guys brought his wife.
Was there.
Yeah, yep. That's right. And
he was the only non-nobility there that night that I can acknowledge.
And who is that now?
Your son.
Oh, my son. Yeah, that's right. He was there that evening. Yes, that's right. He was there. I forgot about that. Yeah, I forgot about. Yeah, he was non-nobility. So other than that, I think everybody else was a noble. And
yes,
you came out and you told me about the board. Was Gunny with you that night, or was he not there?
Gunny was not there that night.
Okay, I was going to say, I thought it was just you.
Yes, it was. Okay. It was just me. He tried to make it, but things happened.
Yeah, there was a couple people that couldn't make it in. I remember there was a couple cancelizations. But while we were there, and please, tell me anything you remember. I remember the first thing we had happen was we were talking, and we were still in the classroom portion, and the automatic door started actuating on its own. No one near it, no one near the pressure pads. It just started opening and closing.
Correct. We were all in the general dining room area, in that one room where we could break the
AB room.
Put the walls in between.
Yep.
And as we're going through the class, something was hitting that pressure plate to make those doors automatically open up.
There was a young bartender, young guy. He was waiting to close out. I remember because where the wall went back for the AB room, there's a fold-down accordion wall that came across there. There was a little area left we can come and go. And I remember at one point he asked us. He said, "Are you guys going in and out of the kitchen a lot?" I said, "No," and he said, "Well, I've heard the door open. I heard footsteps." No, we weren't. We weren't even in that area. So, and Heather wasn't there with us at the time. That was earlier on. But the other thing I remember, and hopefully you do too, is we got talking to it, and all of a sudden one of the emergency lights popped on.
That happened multiple times, man.
Yeah.
When we were in that class, and you were telling us the different degrees of this, that, and that.
Yes.
We're sitting in the class, looking at the slides that was on the wall.
Yes.
The emergency light flashed multiple times.
Yes, I remember we even tried to get a conversation with it at one point to get it to flash once for no or once for yes, two for no. I don't remember if we ever got much intelligible, but it did flash quite a bit when we asked it to.
It flashed multiple times, man.
Yeah.
I mean, just out of nowhere. And I've catered too many gigs in that room.
Yes.
And that had never that never happened before.
Just that night. That was it.
That night, it really, something was trying to do something, okay?
Exactly. It was trying to get to us for some reason and let us know something. And now, help me remember, was there anything else that occurred that night you can remember besides the emergency light and the opening and closing?
That night when we were down in the basement by the Potentate's Lounge.
Okay, over by the Jacobie room, yes.
Jacoby room. But over on the one hallway where the band and everything would keep all of their miscellaneous stuff.
Sure.
As we're walking down that hallway, we got to the corner of Jacobie's storage room.
Yes.
And right next to the band room.
Yes.
The cameras went dead.
Well, I remember that. I didn't until you brought it up, but I do remember that. It was almost like somebody unplugged them.
The cameras went completely dead.
Yeah.
I was holding one of the monitors, and Danelle was holding a monitor.
Yep.
And there was a heck of a spike in the temperature.
Yes, it went up. Yeah, it dropped by like not 10 degrees, like 20 degrees. It was a heck of a drop.
Yeah. Yes, it dropped dramatically. And then me and Danelle were like, what the frick?
Yeah,
What's
exactly.
happening right now? We got a camera that goes completely dead.
Yep.
That was charged up fully before we went downstairs. And then both of our meters were reading extremely cold compared to when we started.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think we went in through the backside of the Corinthian room.
Yes. Used to be called the old Red Fez Club entrance or something. It's just a little hole in the wall back there. Still had the sign above it, but it went in the back end of the Corinthian club or Corinthian room.
Correct.
And the lights were automated back here. We had to shut them all down because they would come. As a matter of fact, me and Ed was just talking about that. And I got thinking about that. That wasn't the first time I changed the batteries out in that camera. I think it was like 3 times it went dead on us.
Yeah, it was just completely shot.
Yeah, and I mean, that was all we had for it was 3 batteries, and we went through all 3. Yeah, I think whatever was there was using that energy to manifest it. I do remember we had some problems with the sound because they were having a rap concert next door at the theater, and it was making a lot of rumbling and sound, and we had some hard times trying to sort the EVPs on some of that, but we did get some things. We did get a few things out of that. And we never got a chance to reveal the evidence because when we got ready to do it, that's when COVID struck and they banned everybody from being anywhere, and that was the end of that program.
That's true.
And never got put back out. We still have all the original evidence from the actual class. And one thing I caught that none of you were aware of in the class, we didn't find this out until we started going through the data. the staircase, it went right by the entrance when you come up. It goes up to the second floor where the Arabian room is at and the entrance to the Egyptian room.
Right.
We caught something on the staircase, and it looked like it was almost like a residual movement. It went up one side and down the other. It was blurred. We never could get a good fix on it, but you could tell by the pixelization changes that this blob was moving up the right side and down the left.
Okay.
And of course, everybody knows you go up the right side of the stairs, come down the left. So it was holding to that fact. But we did get that night. That was something we picked up off that class. And I think everybody had a good time at the class. I mean, some people I've lost contact with. It was great.
Great time.
Well, and recently I've been talking to one of the guys, just so you know, over in the theater side of PR, and he's talking about letting us over there to do some investigating because they've had a few things pop up, not in the theater so much, but in some of the side rooms and areas. And we've been talking back and forth. But now after the remodeling, I know you told me before you left that activity had just dropped off. It was gone. And, and I like I said, I caught up with this one gentleman who asked me, and I may have misunderstood. I guess I ought to go back and look at the kitchen, because if they took those bathrooms out, it may be a totally different wall he's talking about. But, we talked briefly on it, and when they got done with the renovation, did they remove all that, or was that just still there? The bathrooms?
That was all still there.
Okay.
Like I said, when I started, the first year of my 6-year tenure there, they were already completely shut down. You can see the, there was no door handles.
No, just
there were just
doorway. But now, when you
frames.
left there, though, and they did all the major renovation, those were still there, though, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. I got thinking about that because, I haven't been back in the kitchen, I don't think, but maybe just briefly since you left. But this other individual who asked me not to use his name, he had told me the knock had come from there. So I that's the only thing that's been told to me since you left, because I was told after the renovation. I know you told me, and everybody else said nothing really has happened since then. And so, but also at the same time they were doing the renovation, before the major renovation, before they redid everything, when you were there and they were doing the renovation in the kitchen, the flooring and everything, they also had ran a bunch of new internet cables in the basement. And they opened up a ceiling to some of the club rooms. And, of course, the original ceiling of that building was like 15 foot tall. And when they opened it up, I know Chris Pinot, who was one of the guys that was working on that, had caught pictures of some of the paintings and the mosaics of the columns and everything that were covered up by the drop ceilings. So I'm kind of wondering if all that together, we have what we call a construction theory in parapsychology, that anytime construction begins, it either eradicates or it increases paranormal activity, and that would fit to this. So, but
understood.
Well, V, I tell you what, I appreciate everything. I appreciate your interview this night, and the listeners are really going to enjoy this, and I wish you well in Florida. I know you're having better weather than us, brother. I really do.
Oh, yes, I am.
Yeah. Well, look, you be safe, and we're going to get back to our regular programming. All right, folks, I want to thank V. Ferguson, too, because V has moved. He's down in Florida, enjoying the nice weather, and it was good of him to help me out there, so I do appreciate it, V, and when you hear this, I hope you enjoyed it immensely. Okay, so at this point, going beyond 2018, it was decided before the pandemic actually broke out that we were going to redo the Oasis Lounge because they wanted it to appeal to younger Shriners. The lounge now, in my opinion, looks no different than any other downtown lounge. It's just, or bar or whatever you want to call it. It's okay. I personally, I think I offended the potentate. There was 2 potentates during this remodel because it was slowed down due to the pandemic. When the pandemic hit, everybody was restricted. But the Oasis was closed for damn near a year. It was like 8 months, and people were very upset about it because it couldn't go down. You know? They had to find someplace else to be. And I remember V would send me pictures of the progress of what they were doing, and he was there every day. And so anyway, right after it was done, a certain past potentate asked me, he says, "What do you think? What do you think of it?" I said, "It reminds me of a med check. It's very sterile." I hate to say it, but it was. Just wasn't really warm and fuzzy as I remember it. So anyway, we believe that, right after the Oasis was finished, the activity stopped. Again, we're back to the construction theory. There was no more
Right, exactly.
Like V said, it went away. We didn't have any more, after that, it was kind of gone. And during the pandemic, I got a call from the Live Channel side. It said, of course, they call us when they need us. And I want to shout out to Daniel Butler, who helped us out with the Dustin Perry setup, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But anyway, they wanted to have a guy walk through, and he wanted us to. It was kind of funny because the guy called me and says, I need you to train him. I said, this is not parapsychology and 10 easy lessons. I go, it doesn't work that way. Now, I said, if he'll agree to it, I'll send myself and a few other people down there to help him. He was going to spend the night. And this is only for the employees because everybody was laid off during the pandemic. He was going to spend the night in the temple by himself on the theater side. I said, well, let me come down. If he did, we never heard a thing about it. We never did hear how it came out. Matter of fact, I asked Daniel. He didn't seem to know anything about it. I believe I asked Daniel, was the guy I asked, and he didn't seem to know anything about it. So it was pre his tenure there. So we never did find out what happened. But anyway, all the activity had ceased. So fast forward to April the 7th of 2024. We get a call before that from Daniel who says, hey, Dustin Perry of TAPS fame and TAPS International is coming in. He would like you guys to help out a little bit, give a little background on the haunting at the theater. And, we'll supply you tickets to be there. We're asking you to sell tickets at special deal, and we advertised all that. So we were all involved in that. And Dustin's a great guy. He was happy to see us. We were happy to see him. But one of the first things they ask on stage, and Heather will remember this, they ask, let me tell you, let me set this mood, because the night before, on Saturday night, Dustin was there on Sunday. Now, that's a Sunday before the eclipse on Monday.
Right. Which
may not have been the best booking in the world. But Saturday night, we had spent at Fowler Theater. Spoiler alert, that'll be one of the upcoming episodes.
Yep.
And so we were there that night till like 5 in the morning. We get home around 5:30 and get in bed. We get back up to be down at the theater by 5 o'clock again. We have a 12-hour turnaround before we have to be back at Murat Theater for Dustin Perry's performance. So, and Mike Couch was there. Good to see him. So anyway, we get set up in there, and one of the first questions, and Dustin, if you've never seen Dustin's performance, it's really good.
Dustin is probably one of the coolest guys I've ever met.
He is.
He's down to earth. He's friendly. He's just a guy. You know
yeah.
what I mean?
I remember last year we were up at Michigan Paracon, and we needed some photos for PR for our site. And for the record, I don't love PR photos. I hate inconveniencing people, but it's part of the world, and it's what we deal in. So we're trying to get in with Dave Schrader, and Dave goes, I don't have anybody to make the thing on. Dustin, come here real quick. I need you to make photos of us. So we made photos with Dave, and Dustin was our photographer. And then after we were done, I said, well, hey, while you're here, might as well. And we just went ahead and made photos with Dustin. Dustin is one of the most down-to-earth, easygoing guys there is.
He really is.
Yeah, after he started his show, he was looking around. He looked at us, I know you guys. He immediately recognized us in the audience. And we really hoped, he's on a circuit right now, and we really wanted to get him in here for a quick and we may do this down the road, but we wanted to get him for a quick broadcast. Hopefully we can do that. So, but anyway, long story short, the first question, he has a 2-part program. The second half is questions. You have to send them in by way of a QR code he puts on screen. And the very first question was, did you see Jacobie? Did you feel Jacobie? Do you think Jacobie's here? Whoever put the question had some experience and knew either from our video, which we actually put out on YouTube, I think, at one point, but they knew somehow or another that Jacobie was attached to this facility. So they knew the name. They didn't know much about it because some of their inaccuracies were very clear, but they knew something about it. And I'm going to tell you, if you're listening and you want to know more, reach out to us. Post on Facebook. That's what I'm going to ask you to do. Go out, post Mia Kerr, which is our PR manager, our social media manager and PR manager. She'll pick it up, get back to me. I will give you an address. I'll answer any questions I possibly can. So, and actually, we were trying to find the operatic singer that we just talked about.
Right. Can't find it yet, but I'll keep researching.
We're working on it. So, in future episodes, you may get an update. Actually, there's 2 apartments in the mural. A lot of people don't realize this. The Potentate has a small efficiency apartment that was maintained. Now, our Potentates don't use it now. It's been years and years gone. He has his own office and his own bar, but he doesn't have the apartment access any longer. But it was very small compared to this guy. This guy was, I kind of got the impression from the past Potentate told me he was kind of egomaniac, and he had his own. He had the bathroom, which was the most modern bathroom for the 1980s you could get. He had a soaking tub there. He had this whole 9 yards, and he had this routine he would do before he appeared. I kind of got the impression that he thought he was Pavarotti. I don't know, but either way. So Destin Perry came. Destin said, well, you hadn't been there long enough to really tell if there's anything going on. So,
right.
And that's understandable. So anyway, having said that, it was a great show. Destin's show was great. Thank you, Daniel, for all your help, for the free tickets that help get our members in and help in the deals for our other listeners. By the way, it shows you why you should listen to Spirit, and why you should listen to Ghost, and why you should be part of our Facebook page, because we had you got 2 tickets for a price of 1 to see Destin Perry, so that was a good deal. We get special deals, folks. Stay with us, watch, you never know. So, but that's about all I have. Do you ladies have any questions? I mean, we covered a lot of stuff here tonight.
We did cover quite a bit of stuff.
Oh God, yeah, we did, and it's neat. And I tell you what, again, going away from this, I want everybody to take away several things. So first and foremost is, again, it's Murat.
I knew
not
he was
Murat.
going to do that.
Yeah. Got to get that out there. Not Murat.
Are you sure this opera singer is from the 80s?
No, could be earlier. I mean,
everything points to Fabian Savitsky.
Well, that might have been the opera singer. I mean, they were there to the 80s, but that doesn't mean he wasn't.
He actually founded the Indianapolis Opera.
Bingo. I bet that's our guy right there. So we may do something later on that. We may do an update, because
all right.
Maybe we'll do an episode on...
I'll research him and see what we get.
Maybe we'll do an episode
I can't find
on...
anything definitive, but everything points to Fabian.
That might be.
We'll look at it.
Maybe we'll do an episode just on updates. We've been talking about the diamond chain thing, and I'm not going to give that away, but there's stuff moving on that.
There. So
we may do some updates. You may get one episode, nothing but updates. So now...
Where are they now?
Yeah, where are they now? Yeah, So with that, anything anybody wants to add?
No, I think we'll sign off.
I'll tell you what, there's a lot of sources cited, and I'm sure it's not going to go through all of them. I've got like 12 down here I cited on all the research, so we'll put that in the
show notes.
Yeah, that's right, because we sure as hell ain't going over them. So anyway, with that in mind, this episode was written by myself with help from Jennifer and Heather, and also from Eric and Andrew. So... Eric is our research assistant under Heather under Jennifer, and Andrew is our chief of staff. He did some work on this. So thanks for everybody out there to help. And again, folks, the Shrine needs your help. The kids need your help. Do it for the children.
It's all about the kids.
It's all about the kids. That's what we always say. It's all about the kids. So go to our website, donate something, be a member, okay? If you're interested in becoming a Mason Shriner, reach out to me. You'd be surprised. I'll help you where I can. So that's the conclusion for tonight's episode, Ghost to Ghost. We truly hope you enjoyed it. And it's now time for the ghost story of the day.
Today's ghost story of the day is from A Ghost a Day by Maureen Wood and Ron Kolick. The Canmore Opera House, Alberta, Canada. According to an October 28th article in The Gauntlet, prior to its move, the 1800s Heritage House was once the Canmore Opera House, located in Canmore, Alberta. History has it that somewhere around the 19th century, while it was used as a concert hall, its walks reeked of death. When the Canmore mine disaster struck, killing 700 people, the Opera House, due to its size, was used as a morgue. The building changed hands several times until it was donated to Heritage Park in the 1960s. Currently, it sits upon a parcel of land that was once a farm. However, no one is certain if the resident ghost, Sam, as he's been lovingly named, once lived on the farm or was perhaps one of the poor souls lost in the mining tragedy. Where Sam came from matters little. What is known is that Sam is not afraid to show himself. On numerous occasions during rehearsals, he's been seen sitting in the third seat of the third row. He must be an admirer of the fine arts because he merely sits and watches in appreciation, then vanishes when the rehearsal is done. But it's doubtful that Sam is alone. One witness swears he's heard an awe-inspiring voice of a female opera singer reverberating from the main stage. However, when he entered the hall, there was not a soul to be found. Or was there?
Thanks for listening to Ghost. Again, I'm your host, Chief Lawson. You can find Ghost to Ghost on all major formats on the 15th and 30th of the month at midnight. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, maybe have a question or subject you'd like to ask about on air or be used on the show, please email us at ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com, ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com. I want to thank my production staff on Spirit, Jennifer Verne, our research manager and our producer, and Heather Lawson, our trainer on Spirit and our podcast director, for helping make these podcasts possible. My chief of staff, Andrew Brooks, for his guidance and help on the scripts, and everyone else involved. Thank you so much. See you next time. Until then, stay safe and remember the truth is out there. Good night. Ghost to Ghost podcast and its contents is the property of Spirit Paranormal Ltd. All rights reserved. We welcome you to download and play the podcast and share with others for personal use. You may not, except with written permission, use or distribute its contents for commercial use. Spirit Indiana Paranormal, covering the Hoosier State since 2002, Indy's oldest parapsychology investigation group. If you're experiencing what you believe to be paranormal issues, reach out to us for help at www.spiritindiana.com or call our hotline at 317-883-9103. Again, that is www.spiritindiana.com or our hotline at 317-883-9103. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself and the ones you love, and be safe out there.